Doug Williams is 10.
Yeah, so on this week's Touchdowns and Tangents podcast, we break down Black QBs, the transitioning of guards from franchise QBs to first-round picks.
Everyone hates the new guy. No one wants to replace Sinatra. Blase, blase, blase. NFL cheerleaders get no respect. Shout out to NFL doctors calling out concussions. You also have Mike James standing up to the NFL about medicinal marijuana use.
And we got a special call-in from Daiki Sato. I probably butchered that. Sorry about that. But
I think it's Daiku.
He actually dropped some great Chargers insight, both as an expert and as a fan. He works for NFL Network. He writes for Clutchpoints. So it's definitely dope to have him on.
And he dropped some NFL. He dropped some USC knowledge, too. No, we didn't talk about UCLA players. I wonder why.
KB also gave a rundown on undrafted free agents. And we got into the whole Matt Patricia scandals as well as Kaepernick lawsuits. So definitely want to tune in, listen in. Touchdowns and Tangents podcast. What's this podcast like, KB?
This podcast is like when you or your friend or whoever are on a journey. Your days both were kind of hectic. You meet up at the same time. You pretty much say no to all the usual food spots. And then you settle for one spot that was actually kind of fulfilling. But you're so busy, like, talking trash and doing other stuff that you kind of just forget about it. So, yeah, this podcast is that one thing that you take for granted. But it really gets you through the day and your week.
Touchdowns and Tangents. If you like it, subscribe. Leave us a review. We'll shout you out on social. TDs_tangents.
Especially
IG,
on iTunes.
Twitter, whatever. So, the Matt Patricia, what do we call it? Scandal, incident, indictment, like
Sexual inappropriate sexual situation.
Yeah, so basically, it was reported that Matt Patricia had an indictment back in 1996 when he was a student. He was accused of inappropriate behavior, him and somebody else. And pretty much it never came up throughout his whole career until this week. And kind of with everything that's going on just overall in society as far as, you know, people getting Me Too'd in politics in pretty much every industry. I mean, the NFL already got it with Jerry Richardson, the Panthers, who got caught up for inappropriateness. So
And racism and a bunch of other things. And that once that sale goes through, man, they're going to make a lot of money.
But yeah, so now the Lions are going to investigate. The Lions are being investigated by the NFL just to see kind of if they did their due diligence. But the ironic thing is, like, the Patriots employed him for how long? Like 7 years he was D coordinator or something?
Yeah, I'm honestly kind of not shocked that, I mean,
Do we really find abolished?
Do we find out a lot of stuff about New England Patriots coordinators before they get famous? No.
Like my whole thing is, and it sucks that we kind of have to make it this, because, I mean, you know me, I'm always on the side of the victim. I like to give victim. I like to not blame the victim, and I like to do my best to give the accused their due process. But in this case, not only is it like a really long time ago, so, I mean, really, legally, what can you do? But it's pretty much just going to hurt his reputation and probably make the Lions look really stupid. So I don't really know what the motives are here, because obviously I don't know the victim. And I'm really not all that familiar with the whole charges and indictment. So it's just kind of weird timing for me. But like you said, I mean, it's not all that surprising because football coaches are hyper-masculine people. And, well, as you said off air, Matt Patricia looks like he'd be inappropriate. So
he looks like the grouchy white dude from not Community. I want to say Community. No, Parks and Rec. He's a white dude with the beard from Parks and Rec. He gives me that vibe. So, I mean, I think in his particular case, it might just be like some social awkwardness. I don't know. Like that, like people who just aren't really that social tend to have HR problems. So it could be a litany of things. We'll see how it plays out. The Lions didn't really need this headache, though, especially from a guy whose defense gave up like 500 yards in the Super Bowl. But I digress.
And they have to completely transition not only the Lions culture, but also their defensive scheme. So
even though they got a pretty good defensive draft. So we'll see. Who knows?
in a strong conference. That's actually where the Bears might actually be decent.
The Bears,
they might actually be competitive.
As I said last week, the NFC North had the best draft. Top to bottom.
Along the same lines in the NFL, we haven't really gotten a chance to get to it just because we've really been immersed in the NFL draft. If you want a recap, you can go ahead and listen to the past 2 episodes. But this whole Washington football team cheerleaders incident.
Washington.
Racial slurs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It pretty much fell under the whole radar of pretty much mainstream NFL talk radio. I mean, some people talked about it here and there, but like for a day. So, KB, you want to go ahead and give a synopsis of it?
Yeah. First off, I want to preface that Washington is a terrible place to be when it comes to politics and all these other things. So when I hear horrible, dirty stories about sexual promiscuity, but moreover sexual manipulation and, power brokers abusing their power, I'm really not shocked. But the gist of what happened, and it's been reported a bunch of places, pretty much like the Washington racial slurs, cheerleaders, and NFL cheerleaders already have a bunch of lists they have to abide by when it comes to certain teams. But in terms of this team, their cheerleaders was at, I think it was like a charity function or something like that. They were dealing with donors.
It was a booster event.
Yeah. Pretty much high-ranking people. A lot of money to be
sponsors.
A lot of money to be made and donated, potentially. And
sponsorship sold.
And they were essentially forced and maybe coerced. Pretty much, some of them were just naked with body paint on, serving drinks.
Okay, to give a little bit more context, because that was horrible. Basically, it was a calendar shoot.
Yeah.
Where if you've seen any cheerleader calendar, the women are pretty much either in bikinis and or topless, holding their breasts, stuff like that. So pretty much these exclusive VIP members were invited on site to the photo shoot to basically watch the women not only take pictures, but get ready and say hello and converse and stuff like that. On top of the fact that they also had a couple of like boat retreat events where they were on boats with these people and there was a ton of booze. There were other times where they were bid on, kind of not for anything explicitly sexual, but just pretty much bid on to have time with. So they would get handpicked and then they would go to the club and pretty much just hang out with these guys. And from what I read, for the most part, most of them were pretty respectful. And this was not a one-time thing. I think the event in question is from 2013. So even before 2013, in the 5 years since then, the Washington Redskins have been putting their cheerleaders in situations such as this. So pretty much similar type of story as in like what took so long, because 5 years later now everyone is upset about it. Now don't get me wrong, I can understand why it's wrong putting your female cheerleaders in that situation. But like, what do you do about it? Because I think the NFL already issued a statement saying that basically they encourage teams to treat cheerleaders fairly, but since not every team has a cheerleader squad, they really can't do anything about it, like league wise. It's an optional thing, basically. It's
built in. It's like, oh, they're a type of a contractor. Like the way you get past situations like this is pretty much, oh, you're an independent contractor. Also, when it comes to cheerleaders in the NFL in general, they already have a bunch of rules that they have to abide by. It's actually kind of shocking. Like, if they're in the same place with an NFL player, they automatically have to leave. Not allowed to follow NFL players at all on social media, anything like that.
But NFL players can reach out to them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the cheerleaders who was.
It's pretty much like a stereotypical bad
be seen and not
workplace.
Hurt. Be seen and not hurt. And in one of the cases, one of the cheerleaders, who had a grievance, pretty much was like, we'll settle the lawsuit against the NFL if we can have like a 4-hour meeting with Goodell, settle for $1 for him to actually sit down with us and hear our issues. So clearly, it's really an issue of A, they're not being heard, and B, it's kind of being treated like an independent contractor, where it's like you're not really the star. And this is kind of like a thing I've noticed for cheerleaders at every level. If we're going to be honest, they really do get treated like a sideshow. I mean, in some cases, when it comes to football, cheerleading is the thing that people show up for because the team is so crappy. Or in other cases, the cheerleaders are really popular. They'll have followings, whatever. In college, obviously, it varies. And then you get to the pros, and you're dealing with women who are doing their job, but still being taken advantage of just based off the rules and the landscape that they're in. So
yeah, pretty much it's not like an issue of anything explicitly being done wrong to them. It's just
a culture
that's not conducive
to women.
To not even just women, but just professionals in general. Like, nobody wants to be fondled with
billionaire
with
boys
their
club.
eyes.
It's billionaire boys club stuff.
It's stuff that we all know happens, and only some of us are privileged enough to.
Have you seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut? Maybe not that extreme, but something close to it.
Yeah, man, and we apologize for any background noise this week, but Kenny's over here sweating bullets, so I had to turn on the AC.
Like, I didn't realize how insanely hot it was without the air.
I don't know. Maybe it was the brew you had before.
Probably the hoodie and the fact that I'm wearing all black.
That probably has something to do with it as well.
Yeah. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see where that lawsuit goes. I think further than just this. Because the NFL is being hit with a lot right now. The Kaepernick Reid lawsuit.
Yeah, man, which is actually what I wanted to get to next. Actually, Daniel Snyder and Pete Carroll were both deposed.
Ooh.
I think it was today or yesterday for the Kaepernick case.
I can imagine what Daniel Snyder said.
I haven't read too much about it other than it happened, so I'm sure there'll be more on it as the week goes on, so stay posted for that. But
if you heard a police siren, that wasn't us. That was really a police siren outside somewhere.
Perfect timing.
So when you hear that, Daniel Snyder was on a federal case or whatever, being interviewed by police, yeah, just that's the sound you hear.
And we've talked about this throughout the weeks. The biggest thing about the Kaepernick case is that if the NFL is found guilty of collusion, you're talking about pretty much a fallout of the whole CBA and potentially players union and a lot of money being hopefully settled to Kaepernick. I don't know. I don't really know how the situation plays out.
The landscape being changed. Think of it as it's much bigger than Thanos snapping his fingers with the Infinity Gauntlet. It's more like
spoiler alert.
That's in the comic. That's in the comic books. First off, did you not read the Avengers comic books? That's literally what happens. So it wasn't a spoiler.
No, I didn't. I'm not a comic guy.
Yeah, of course not.
I'm just a culture vulture who goes and watches the movies.
That you just kind of spoiled.
And I watched them twice.
You may or may not have spoiled it. All I know is in the comic books, Nebula, his adopted daughter but sworn enemy, pretty much gets the Infinity Gauntlet from Thanos, takes it, and jacks up the whole universe. Like, it just destroys everything. The whole landscape, everything has to be redone. Think of it kind of like that. One guy, one man, a lawsuit so huge that it pretty much rips off the decadent veil and you realize the emperor